So guys, are you ready to bust a few myths about PW technology that are circulating across the development community?
Definitely.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, thank you very much for joining, and let's begin. So before we get to the concerns, let's just talk about your background and experience with PWAs. So my first question to you guys is, how and why did you start to learn PWA?
Want to go first, Mike?
Sure, yeah. So first, I guess, I first started learning PWAs because, as someone who has spent a lot of time with this mobile cross-platform development, PWAs seemed like the next logical step to, remove the need of having to submit something to an app store and I'm just using web technology. So it was just the natural progression, and I really liked some of the mindset changes that it forced you to confront. I was like, oh, this is a different set of challenges than what I'm used to. Let's try it out.
Cool. Yeah, for me, it was mostly because I got bored with like default Magento. I've been doing that for a few years. I was like, I need something more fun, something more JavaScript related. So when I was at my like peak of boredness with Magento, then PWA Studio came out. I believe it was version 1 or 2, and I pretty much just jumped on that train, and we're here now.
Oh yeah, Magento PWA Studio is a real masterpiece. Okay, but why actually PWA? What's your interest as a developer in PWA technology?
For me, it really pushes the web kind of in a first class citizen, so to speak. Where it's really fun technology, really fun mental models that you work with, and at the end of the day, what you're getting is something that um, feels like a native app, but it's still just the web. You're not having to learn a new tech stack. You can make the web on par with what your traditional native app developers have always kind of uh, you know, oh, look at what we can do in native land. It's like I can do the same thing now on the web.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, for me, it's mostly because JavaScript comes pretty natural to me, and I just love that the front end space is moving so fast. I like to innovate, and we're pretty much on the cutting edge of what you can do with a browser, and that's something that really attracts me to PWAs.
Yeah, awesome guys, thanks. I really love PWAs. I'm a fan of PWAs. I even have some of them added to my home screen on a mobile device. YouTube. I think everyone uses YouTube. YouTube PWA is perfect, simply perfect. Okay, awesome. So I guess let's dive into the concerns, shall we? The first question. There's a tendency we see that backend developers don't want to learn PWA since they think it's a front-end technology. They will need to learn new stacks that belong to the front end more than to the backend. And basically, my question, it consists of two sub-questions. How much do you agree with these assumptions, and why backend developers should work on PWA projects?
Jordan, why don't you go?
Yeah,
Go
sure.
first with this one.
Yeah, I guess it kind of depends on how your company is structured, right? The company I've worked at, Experius, which is a Magento agency, there was a divide between front end and back end. So the back end is just like all the PHP stuff, and then you have the front end, and that is, the JavaScript and the whole PWA side of things. And for us, like the backend developers, actually, they like to work on PWA projects because the only thing they needed to do for us is just expose GraphQL, and we just use that. So it really depends. Like if you're as a backend developer also in, I only know of Magento, but if you're in Magento also doing like the the teaming and stuff, then yeah, you need to learn that as well, like on the PWA side. But if you got the divide between front end and back end, then it's mostly going to be extending APIs and stuff. So it's actually not that hard.
So I don't have, I guess, as much of a back-end experience. Most of the experience I have with this is just writing it in JavaScript. So it's a bit of a different trade-off, but the kind of things that you need to consider when it comes to working in back-end and working on a PWA project, they're very similar with different approaches. Like you still need to worry about is this going to take a long time for is this going to be a long process that our front end is going to need to care about? What are we exposing to our users? In my session yesterday, I talked about things like web payments, and that's still a concern that you're going to need to kind of address in your backend. So I think backend developers should work on PWA projects because it's just a unique and very interesting set of problems. Then it's difficult on the front end, but the back end side of it, it's still very difficult. You could be either doing things like server-side rendering of your front-end JavaScript, or you could be doing just your traditional multi-page apps that are still server-side, either with Magento or any other back-end technology.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that developers should at least try working on PWA projects, and then they'll see that it's basically magic. They are doing something new. They are learning something new. And I guess that's the beauty of it. And PWA Studio also provides the extensibility framework, which helps with extending existing functionality within Magento and covering it with GraphQL. So the power is there. We would like our developers, all developers, to at least try and see, well, this is what I want to do in the future. Okay, let's move on. While talking to developers about PWAs, we noticed that not every developer knows where the technology is today. And well, it's totally okay because technologies change fast. So I'd like to make a small blitz for what PWAs can and cannot do in 2021. So can they send push notifications?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's basically a very quick answer. Can PWAs be added to Google Play Market and Apple App Store?
Yeah, they can be added to the Play Market through Trusted Web Activities, but not to the App Store, I believe.
Yeah, no to Apple, kinda for Google Play, but a big yes for Microsoft. They've been doing a lot to get that actually more than Google, it seems.
And I think Samsung is also doing something on this regard these days. Too bad, so, yeah. Apple, we're waiting for you. Okay, can PWAs achieve Google's Core Web Vitals green zone for real users, the field data metrics?
Yeah, for sure. It's just like how much time and effort you spend into properly structuring your app and focusing on the Core Web Vitals. But yeah, for sure.
You build a good app, you can achieve it.
Yeah. Server-side rendering, and is it actually worth it?
Is it worth it? That's going to depend.
Yeah, for sure you can server-side render, but I believe not in every case. It's like it actually can hurt performance in some cases. But I think like in general, for now we still need to do like server-side rendering of some sort or pre-rendering, one of those. Otherwise, we're just gonna not have any SEO values. because Google still cannot. Well, probably they technically can read JavaScript side, but like in the real world, it's just not happening. So yeah, you need to use either server-side rendering or some pre-rendering.
Can PWAs process offline payments?
Offline payments? They can do payments. I don't know if they have a way to do like offline queuing of those payments once they are triggered.
Yeah, I think that it kind of depends on how you build your app, right? Because I think, and I'm just thinking out loud, but if you in the checkout, if you know that your app is offline, you can probably like save that payment, and then whenever the user's online again, it can show a push notification like complete your order or something like that. So it's like semi offline. It's not fully offline, of course, but
yeah, I think that would be a really cool feature because I love purchasing online, believe me. And sometimes when you're riding in a train or in a subway and you lose internet connection, well, then such a solution might help. And I guess my last question in our blitz is, can we have a Magento PWA extensions and products marketplace?
Yeah, for sure. I believe there are already a bunch of like extensions from Amasti and whatnot that support like PWA Studio. So I'm pretty sure they will also come to the Magento marketplace if they're not there already.
Awesome.
Go with his answer. I'm not a Magento expert, so.
Okay. Let me cite one of the developers' questions. Is PWA easy to extend? It seems that PWA is a thing in itself where you are limited to what a theme can offer, the theme default capacities. And any customization will cost a ton of money. So is PWA easy to extend? Jordan, what do you think about this?
Well, I think like it's important to first note that PWA is not a single product. PWA is very much a design pattern, a way of using different techniques and combine those together and you get like a PWA. So is PWA easy to extend? Well, it pretty much depends on how you build your PWA, right? So in terms of PWA Studio from Magento, it is getting better. We're getting more extensibility. So yeah, it's pretty easy to extend once you get the hang of it. But in general, like I said, it's good to know that PWA is not a product. It's just a design pattern.
Mike, do you have anything else to add to this? No, I think that covers it really well. If you build a good app, you can extend it whether or not you want to classify it as a PWA or not. Yeah, Jordan covered it.
Awesome. Yeah, from my point of view, I think indeed it depends on how you build your PWAs. For example, if you have dozens of extensions, but all of them are independent, covered with functional tests, unit tests, using the extensibility framework or anything else that you're using will help you with extending your functionality or adding anything else. Okay, so the next question. A number of dev specialists believe that PWA is dead and that there is low business demand for PWA development in e-commerce. And it's one of the reasons why they don't learn PWA. As a company working with e-commerce businesses, we know the opposite problem, having a queue of clients who want to adopt PWAs. So based on that, I have two questions for you. How to actually show and communicate to the dev specialists that the demand is high, and what should dev agencies do to increase developer interest in the PWA technology?
To increase interest in progressive web apps, I would just start sprinkling a little bits of things here and there, like adding the theming capabilities to your site, potentially adding some of the offline features here and there. Just kind of sounds a little sneaky, but just start adding some of those features. And when your clients actually notice that, if they come to you and like, hey, what's going on here? How come I can still use the site when I'm offline? It's like, well, this is a part of Progressive Web Apps. We can do more, but I just want to add like at least the bare basics of what PWA can do. And kind of show how high demand is. Honestly, there's some really good PWA specific stores that exist out there, or like search indexes of just Progressive Web Apps. Show like, hey, this is a real life e-commerce store, and they are a PWA. There's some install rates. There's some metrics on how successful it's been. This is stuff that is staying around for the long haul. You should definitely be doing this.
Yeah, it's also a bit of a snowball effect, right? As soon as like competitors check each other's sites and see like, hey, this is so much faster, so much better, they'll probably go to their development agency and say like, we don't know what it is, but we need this, and then they'll figure out it's a PWA, and then gets the ball rolling.
Just need that one person to be like, yeah, let's do it. Let's do a PWA.
Exactly.
Yeah, indeed, there are a lot of PWAs already on the market. Doesn't mean those have to be commerce PWAs. Those can be like social media, like Twitter or YouTube, like we've mentioned. And based on my personal experience, I can see that there are a lot of clients already waiting for developers to create the PWAs for them. So again, such clients that have already applied PWAs, they never regret about this decision. So it's high time for the developers to start learning the PWA and create e-commerce stores. If we're talking about Magento PWA, e-commerce stores of the future, but already today. Perfect. That should actually bust the myths and concerns. So let's move on. We have a few questions about PWA implementation cases and questions around them. Are you ready, guys?
Yeah.
Awesome. So PWA is fast, but still requires at least basic optimization. For example, a category page can have 200 plus requests, which can negatively affect page speed metrics. Is it possible to decrease the number of requests from the backend without having to sacrifice functionality? What do you think, guys?
Yeah, if your category page has 200 requests, then you either have a massive category page with a lot of different endpoints, or you're doing something wrong, I guess. But it's a tricky one, because if you, for example, use Apollo, you can limit the amount of requests that's been done to the backend. So yeah, it really depends on the situation and the way your app is built, but you can limit the amount of requests, and yeah.
There's also ways where you can preload or prefetch some of those connection points, so the browser at least has the initial handshake already done, and then the actual fetching of data is just, who I am, backend, just give me the data, and it can at least remove some time waiting for that communication layer. So I think it's link-rel prefetch or pre-connect. I forget the actual value name, but there's ways to do it where it's just adding that little endpoint right into your template.
I think I know where usually such issues come from the business perspective. For example, a category page where we have a lot of products listed. If we're talking about configurable products, you can have a category page which already allows customers to choose the size, the color, and so on, and add the product to the cart directly from the category page. Of course, such pages will have additional requests because the page will be more heavy. So I guess we should compromise. Developers should say, you know what, maybe we should decrease the number of features on the category page and ask the business owner to maybe just add some features elsewhere to promote the product. So if we compromise and also find the best ways for decreasing the number of requests per page, I guess we can achieve just the middle size of a page. Okay. I often hear that the biggest pains related to extensibility is the lack of extensions with GraphQL coverage, so-called PWA-ready extensions on the market. No GraphQL coverage means that PWA agencies have to implement this instead of the extensions as vendors, which means more time to delivery and, well, how difficult can it be to cover extensions with GraphQL and make them PWA-ready? What do you think?
Yeah, I feel like this question is pretty much tied to Magento. It depends. Like if you, I believe that bigger agencies can always try and push the roadmap of like a extension developer, but I'm also not a Magento backend developer, but pretty much like most of the Magento modules like output data somewhere. So in like the simplest form, you can just pass that through your like GraphQL Resolve or whatever you have in the backend, and just pass that data through to your APIs. So it shouldn't be like too hard, but you're probably gonna run into some optimization issues if you do that. So it really comes down to the module and yeah, how big it is in terms of functionalities. But from what I've seen lately, more and more modules are actually getting extension points for GraphQL and stuff. So I believe that the how do you say, the marketplace is changing towards a more API first approach. So that's a really good thing.
Mike, do you have anything else to add to this?
Yeah, you know, I guess like having a REST API and then creating some sort of GraphQL endpoint on your own side that can just wrap that REST endpoint. It's always an option. There's plenty of ways that can be implemented. I think dgraph is one as well. So ecosystem eventually catches up. It's maybe some pain points here and there, but eventually those things will go away.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. We also have questions from developers regarding the learning path. So, well, let's go through them. And the first question is how to start with PWA, what to consider before getting started.
How to start? I mean, I would just start looking at building something. Could just be a multi-page app, could be a single-page app. Build something. Like I said, add that little service worker. There's some really good recipes out there on how to just add the very basic of offline caching. Whether it's using a pre-built module from the Magento ecosystem or just something that you wrote your own. Just start and look at it. It doesn't need to be overly complex, but you know, I'm of the mindset the best way to learn how to do something is just by going out and doing it. Realize that you are going to make some mistakes and that the browser's dev tools are essential for getting yourselves out of trouble and also understanding what is happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, I think that's like the best advice you can give someone. Just get started. Actually, what I've done is at my previous company, we just sold a project and we figured it out later. So we actually, we just needed to because we sold it, and it turned out pretty okay. So that was a driving factor for me learning all the new stuff. But it's also like there is so much you can learn regarding PWAs and a lot of stuff you don't need in the beginning. So if you have like a goal that you need to reach, then you only need to focus on those parts, and you can pretty much Google anything that you run into, and then just incrementally add more features and add more functionalities to your project. I feel like that's a better way of learning than going to a code academy or something and follow like endless hours of videos and trainings and stuff like that.
You could learn like five things, but if you only need that one, why'd you just waste your time learning about everything else?
Right.
Yes, totally agree. And that's why my next question is, what resources would you recommend to learn PWA?
Google? Google Stack Overflow should be solid.
Yeah. There's web.dev, which also has some really
Mhm.
specific articles on best practices and just progressive web app basics. All of them, not all of them, most of them are maintained and written by Googlers, but it's like an open ecosystem for people to add their own resources. So you can get a variety of voices and opinions on PWAs.
Yeah, and I really love the Magento PWA Studio documentation. It helped our developers when starting their first PWA projects. So keep it up, guys. Next question is about Webpack. Is Webpack important for backend developers? What backend and frontend developers should know about Webpack to make the most of it?
Yeah, that really depends on how your company is structured. Like if your backend developers are also in like the front end space, then yeah, it could be beneficial to learn Webpack. But for developers that are working on PWA Studio and you have like that back and front end divide, then there's not really a need to learn Webpack or to, I think it's for every developer good to at a basic know what it's doing. But I believe that as a backend developer, it's not really your job to configure Webpack and stuff.
Agreed. And Webpack itself is complex enough. If you can avoid learning about it and just use your tools that abstract it, you're probably going to be better off for it. But specifically backend developers, it's just a thing that exists, and you're probably going to have to be aware of it, but you don't really need to know it.
Yeah, Webpack can be tricky. It's like with cars. You start repairing a car in the morning, and the next thing you know, it's already evening and time for a beer. Okay, we have a question from Jackie Angus. If you're familiar with some junior Magento 2 dev but have no experience in Node.js, do you have anywhere you would recommend to learn skills needed to work with PWA?
Well, if you're already in the Magento ecospace and you're thinking about starting to work with PWA Studio, you don't really need to learn Node.js unless you're gonna dive into middleware and stuff. But for the first few projects, you probably won't need that. So to learn PWA Studio, yeah, pretty much the documentation and in essence, it's just React. So it's React with Apollo, with some other tools, and that's pretty much it.
The React layer, I'm assuming, would just be just a surface layer of things. Your PWA Studio would probably be the more effective thing to understand or to learn versus the inner workings of the JavaScript framework or Node.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, guys. The next question is from Lewis. What about moving several calls to server side with SSR or ISG? So isn't it less client size if you already moved to view models instead of blocks in the module? Then it's easier.
That can work if you are. It's a trade-off, right? Because if you're doing more things on the server side, chances of that response coming back from the server in a timely manner could be slower. The payload for whatever it is that you are trying to send to the client, that could be slower because now, the payload can be bigger, requiring more time to parse. It's a balancing act. You have to figure out, is it better to server-side render this or to render this on the client side? And, experiment, kind of measure and understand which one is going to be an appropriate choice for your use case.
Mm-hmm. Jordan, can you add something else to this?
I've been working with Lewis for like 6 years, so I'm pretty much. He probably already figured it out, and it's a rhetorical question. But no, yeah, I agree with Mike on this one.
Okay, thank you, guys. Let's find our next question. Magento PWA devs currently in demand on the market. I'm thinking of moving to it, but hesitate because don't know about 2-3 years perspective. Well, that should be easy.
Well, yeah, just go for it. I don't think you have to be scared for the 2 to 3 years perspective. Magento is going to be around, PWA Studio is going to be around, and if you learn PWA Studio, you inherently also learn React and everything that's around the React ecosystem, and you can pretty much get a job working as a React developer everywhere. So yeah, no worries.
Plus, the best practices from like PWA in general aren't going anywhere. Even if the term PWA eventually is replaced with something else, those core concepts of providing a fast offline experience, those are going to be evergreen. You're always going to want to make sure that you have something like that.
Yes, I also agree that PWAs won't go anywhere. I guess those PWAs will be developed pretty fast in the coming years, and more e-commerce stores will see that the potential of PWAs for them is simply incredible, and they will start looking for the developers who will be ready to develop them for as soon as possible. Okay, I guess we have time for one last question, and it's actually for Jordan. When Google and Apple Pay will be available? Any news on this?
No, I am not aware. If it's not on the roadmap, then I don't have the information for you, unfortunately. So I'm pretty sure it's not on the current roadmap. So it will probably be at least like a year from now. But don't take my word for it.
Maybe we will find some contributors who will be ready to add this feature.
Sorry, come again?
Maybe we can find some Magento PWA Studio contributors who will be ready to add this feature.
That would be amazing. They can always go to pwastudio.io and take it from there.
Awesome. Okay, I guess we're running out of time. So Mike, Jordan, I really appreciate you taking the time and taking part in this discussion.
Thanks for having us.